soya bean on this axis. And every point in that 3-dimensional space will become a point in the 2-dimensional space here as outputs. And this function will tell you what the technology is. This function will tell you what the technology is. Right? Okay, so each point, so therefore, there will be a sphere here and there will be an open circle. Is it clear? And you can think of higher dimensions like this, but obviously you can't think of geometric objects, which you can visualize, but the idea works there. Right? Now, let me talk to you about something important. Convex sets. So think of, say, some n-dimensional real line space, right? Think of n-dimensional real space, right? Okay. We say that a set S belonging to Rn is a convex set, right? If whenever S belongs to, X belongs to S, Y belongs to S. X and Y need not be simple points. In the R1 there will be one simple point. In R2 there will be a pair. In R3 there will be a triplet. In R4 there will be a quadruplet, right? Okay, so X and Y belong to S, okay? For some lambda greater than 0, such that lambda less than 1, lambda lies between 0 and 1, lambda X also belongs to S. Okay, also belongs to S. Right. Now let me tell you what this means. So first think of simple R2. Okay? Think of simple R2. Think of a subset of R2, which I will call this circle S, or whatever object I draw. Right? Okay? Okay? Think of some point X here, which is x1, x2. Right? So think of some point X here, let this point be say 1, 2. Right? 1, 2. Right? Think of some point Y here, okay, which is say 3, 5, okay, 3 or 4. So 4. Choose any number lambda, lies between 0 and 1. So tell me, any number lambda? 0.5. She says 0.5. Construct lambda into X plus 1 minus lambda into Y, which is 0.5 into X plus 0.5 into Y, yeah, which is what? 0.5 into 1, 2, 0.5 into 4, 3, which is what? 0.51, yeah? Sure? Which is what? Yeah? Now you must then check, finally say, what is, does this also belong to S? If this point also belongs to S, no matter whatever lambda you choose, the set S is called a convex set. The set S will be called a convex set. So no matter what lambda you choose, you say lambda into X plus 1 minus lambda into Y, right? If the resultant or if X and Y belong to Y, this is called a linear combination of X and Y. So another way of defining convex sets is, if you take any set, any point X belonging to the set, any point Y belonging to the set, every linear combination of X and Y must also belong to the set. Right? Okay? Now, what is really a linear combination? think of R1. Think of R1. Okay, so you've got R1. Think of X as 1, Y as 2. X as 1, Y as 2. Think of some lambda X plus 1 minus lambda Y. What will lambda, so think of some point. Think of some lambda. What lambda should we choose? Not 0.5 again, right? 0.1. So what will be lambda X plus 1 minus lambda Y? 0.1 into 1. What this number be? 0.1 into 1 plus 0.9 into 2 is what? 1.9. So where is 1.9? 1.9 will be some point here. Yeah? If you choose any other lambda, say choose any other lambda. Choose any other lambda. 0.7. If you choose lambda is equal to 0.7, what will you get? So this will be 0.7 and this will be 0.1 minus lambda. 0.3. So what will this answer be? 0.7 plus 1.3. 1.3. So 1 point will be some point here. If you choose some other lambda, you get some point between 1 and 2. So the point is, these points, set of points lambda x plus 1 minus lambda y are actually nothing but all the points joining x and y. If lambda is equal to 0, you get y. If lambda is equal to 1, you get x. And by choosing lambda appropriately, you can get any point between x and y. So essentially, lambda x and lambda y. So basically, a linear combination x and y is nothing but the set of all points. For example, in R1 is nothing but the set of all points between x and y. In R2, what would this be? Suppose this is R2. Say this is x1, x2, and say this is, or say x1, y1. So this is this point, this is this point. What would the linear combination of x and y be?
So the line joining it and not the area.
The line joining this, right, will be the linear combination of lambda x plus 1 minus lambda y.
Yeah.
So the linear combination of x and y will be the set of all points joining these 2 points. So in R2 we have a very intuitive definition of a convex set. A set in R2 is convex. Okay, a set in R2 is convex. Yeah, a set in R2 is convex if if you take any 2 points x and y, the line joining these 2 points must lie entirely within the set. All points, all linear combinations of x and y must belong to S. We say set S is convex if whenever x belongs to S, y belongs to S, any linear combination of x and y must also belong to S. Right? Any linear combination of x and y must also belong to S. Right? Okay. So, a set is convex in R2 if for any 2 points in X R2, the line joining these 2 points lies entirely within R2. Right? Now tell me whether this is a convex set. Will this be a convex set? Will the line joining any 2 points in this set also lie entirely in this set?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Like this, right? Okay. Will this be a convex set? Yeah? Will this be a convex set? No. Suppose I have a donut type shape. Suppose a donut. Right? So these are the all points which contain the set. Will this be a convex set? No. Okay. Now, so you understand what a convex set? Okay. Now tell me, will the intersection of two convex sets be convex? Will the intersection of two convex sets be convex?
Yes.
Prove. So if A is a convex set, B is a convex set. Prove that A intersection B is a convex set.
So if A and B are two convex set means that any linear combination of any point in those sets belongs to the set itself. Therefore, if you take any x which is at the intersection of the two, then the linear combination is also going to belong to them.
Yeah. But I want you to write this down formally in the next class and prove it to me. Okay, that's your homework. If A and B are two convex sets, is A intersection B also a convex set? Right? Okay. Now, you've got some very important ideas. Okay. You've got some very important ideas. Think of, that's what we're going to. Okay. Now tell me guys, suppose you have a function, okay? Suppose you have x1, say suppose you have y and x, and suppose there are two commodities that you are consuming, and you get some utility from consuming this commodity, right? We think of this utility as a real number. So you consume some x, some y, and you get some real number r. So what you will be defining is a utility function from R2 to R. So utility function really is a function from R2 to R. Okay? Utility function is really some function from R2 to R. Okay? What is the kind of a function? It says, say u of, so think of all combinations of x1 and x2 which are associated with the same point alpha. Let that function be u of x1, x2. Right? Because what are we doing? We are actually having a function from this space x to r, right? With each x1, y1, x2, y2, we are associating a real number. Right? Suppose the function is, say x1. So whatever x you consume into whatever y you consume, that is the utility that you get. Right? Okay. So this is the function, right? Okay. Right? So what we'll write is u of x1, x2 is xy. So each u of xy is x into y. So if you consume 3 apples and 2 bananas, you get 6 utility. If you consume 5 apples and 20 bananas, you get 100 utility. Right? So that's the way suppose we have conceptualized this function. Right? Okay. Now think of all the combinations of apples and bananas which give you the same utility. That is, think of all x and y such that u of xy is equal to alpha. Think of all xy so that u of xy is equal to alpha. Right? Think of all xy so that u of xy is equal to alpha. Is that something that you already know? The indifference, we are getting close to the indifference curve idea, right? Now what we'll understand today is why are indifference curves convex to the origin. We are going to understand mathematically why indifference curves are convex to the origin. Okay, why indifference curves are convex to the origin. Why do you think they are convex to the origin? What have you been taught in the so far in college? Why do you think indifference curves are convex to the origin? Because the marginal rate of substitution, right? What is the marginal rate of substitution?
get something of more.
The ratio of marginal utility, right? And the idea is that if you consume more of apples, then obviously your utility for apples falls and the marginal utility for oranges increases, so it goes like this, right? Okay. But you see a flaw with this argument? The flaw with this argument is it assumes something psychological about people. It assumes that if you eat more apples and more oranges, if you eat more apples, the utility that you get from an additional apple continues to fall and so on. So it's a psychological assumption which is not tested anywhere. Right? Okay, so do you really? The point is we don't want to build the whole edifice of mathematical economics on some psychological assumption about people. That psychological assumption is extremely tenuous. You must have sometimes wondered about that, right? In your college, they must have given you a large number of criticisms of the law of diminishing margin. Most of those criticisms are wrong the way your college textbooks puts that. But still, it's a psychological assumption. And the idea is to put everything onto a firm mathematical basis without using these psychological assumptions. And now that's where our ideas of what we're going to do is going to help us. Okay? Right. What we are now going to do is, instead of making some psychological assumptions, we're going to make some formal mathematical assumptions. Right? Okay. Right. So we have so that's the idea. Okay. Now so think of x and y, okay, and think of some convex set here, okay. Think of some convex set x, okay. So the idea is, let me define the idea of a separating hyperplane. Okay, let me define the idea of a separating hyperplane and a supporting hyperplane. Okay, those ideas are very important if you have to understand why indifference curves are convex to the origin. Right? Because very important they are convex to the origin. Yeah? Okay. So first, let me write the idea of a separating hyperplane. First, let me define a hyperplane simply as, so basically first let me define a hyperplane for you. Okay. All points x, so that f of x is equal to some constant alpha. The set of all points x, so that f of x is some constant alpha, is a hyperplane. So in fact, the indifference curve is a hyperplane. An isoquant is a hyperplane. Right? An indifference curve is a hyperplane. An isoquant is also a hyperplane because it's the set of all x1, x and y which is the same utility, or all the labor and capital combinations which produce the same output. Right? Sure, and so in a multi-output framework, of course, you can't think of an R2 to R1, but in general, the set of all combinations which produce the same amount of 2 or 3 whatever outputs that you produce, that would be the hyperplane. Right? Is that a hyperplane clear to everybody? Right? So of all points. Now, the separating hyperplane theorem says, there exists such that for any y not belonging to C, or x belonging to C, can you explain this idea to me? Read this, tell me, explain something important, something intuitively very simple. What does this mean? So everybody knows what a vector space is? What's a vector space? Set of objects closed under vector addition and scalar multiplication. Set of objects closed under vector addition and scalar multiplication, right? Okay? So if you add these two objects, the resultant must be an object belonging to the same collection. If you multiply this object with a scalar, the resultant must also belong to the same set, right? Must also be a collection of that object. Okay? Right. So there exists a hyperplane g of x equal to b such that, so think of, so let me just tell you what it geometrically means in a two-dimensional space. Right. So think of R2. Think of a convex set C in R2. Think of a y does not belong to this set. Then it says that there exists a hyperplane which contains y. That is, there exists a set of points x1, x2 and a function g of x, right? There exists a hyperplane g of x to b such that for y, any y not belonging to C, y belongs to g of x. Right? Y belongs to g of x. Y belongs to, y is in the hyperplane, right? Y belongs to, so y is the x hyperplane such that one of the two occurrences that the y is in the hyperplane in C, right? So everybody understand what a hyperplane is? Set of all points x, so the f of x is equal to alpha. So y belongs to that hyperplane. Hyperplane is a set. Okay, so there exists a hyperplane to which y belongs, and then this hyperplane, for example, if you think of this as this, then this hyperplane gives you two half spaces and C belongs either to this or to this. So for all x belonging to C, g of x is either less than b or greater than b. So basically it says if you think of any convex set, belonging to a vector space, and if you think of any point which does not belong to this convex set, then there will always exist a hyperplane which will contain this point y, right? And the two half spaces which will be generated by this hyperplane, subset, two half spaces to be generated by this hyperplane will be, one of them will contain the entire C. One of them will contain the entire C. So, okay. So, think of an indifference curve.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, can you please explain this again?
Yeah. So, think of a vector space. Think of a convex subset of this vector space. Call it C. And think of some element Y which does not belong to C. Then the separating hyperplane theorem says that there will always exist a hyperplane which will contain Y. Y will belong to that set such that G of Y is equal to some constant. So you can think of some constant. So if you think of some constant, then the set of all points which are mapped into that constant, then Y will belong to one of these, and then that will define two subspaces. C will belong to entirely to one of the subspaces.
So with the definition saying C is a subset of the two open half spaces. So is it
C will belong to one of the see it says C is a subset of the two open half spaces with the hyperplane, that is for all x, or let's say is a subset of either of them. Either of the two open spaces. That makes it clearer? Now, so think of an indifference curve as a hyperplane. Yeah? What will be the two open spaces around that hyperplane? What will be the two subspaces or two half spaces that indifference curve divides the vector space into? So what will be the hyperplane associated with indifference curve? Set of all conjugation bundles which give you alpha amounts of it. So what will be the two hyperplanes?